Today's presentation is Apple in 2016 and its impact on IT. My name is Nick Thompson, and I'll be your host today. And joining me is Tad.
Hey, Nick, and thanks to everyone who's joined us today.
Awesome. So we're really passionate about this topic. We love Apple, and we love Apple in IT, and we want to take a look back at what Apple has been doing this year. They've made some really significant strides in the industry, and we're going to analyze what they've done so far. We'll also look forward to 2016 and try to make some predictions about where they're going. And finally, we'll tie this all back to what it means for you. So, if anyone isn't familiar with us, wanted to just give you a briefer on who we are and what we do. We are Jamf Software, and we help organizations succeed with Apple. It's written right there on our sign. We started managing Macs back in 2002, really long before they were popular in the enterprise. We now manage over 5.1 million devices, and we serve over 5,900 customers, and they stay with us a lot too. And if you're not familiar with our online community, we have something called Jamf Nation. We have now over 20,000 members in this free open forum that you can go and connect and share ideas with other IT admins. We now have over 500 employees here at Jamf, and we are spread across the entire globe with 8 offices globally. So you can connect with us pretty much locally. Our main product that we sell is something called the Casper Suite. And the Casper Suite is a set of administrative tools to help you manage your Apple devices. You can use the Casper Suite to deploy, inventory, and secure your devices. Additionally, you can also support your users with our self-service app that really serves as an internal catalog that you can populate with apps or printers or any other resources that your end users need. Now, the presentation today isn't going to focus a whole lot on the product itself, so I wanted to give just a brief primer on it in case anyone isn't familiar with it. If you'd like to go deeper on the product, I'd highly recommend checking out some of our other webinars and reaching out to us after the presentation as well, too. So, let's talk about Apple and what they've been doing this year, because they've made a lot of different moves in the industry. And the first one that we want to analyze is iCloud. iCloud has been a service that Apple has been expanding over and over the past few years and have been growing larger and larger. In fact, they've opened up some new facilities recently in terms of actual data centers to increase their capacity. Tad, what do you think about iCloud and how they've been growing it?
Yeah, this has been interesting to watch as this has evolved over the years. Any of us who've been using Apple for a while now, we remember back in the days of .Mac or MobileMe, there were a couple glitches with the cloud services. But in the most recent iteration of this with iCloud over the past few years, it's really clear to me that Apple has matured this service. They're really offering world-class cloud services now through iCloud. And what's great is this is a benefit both to home users who might use iCloud for things like storing photos or their music, as well as for enterprise users. I think that Apple's experience with building out their cloud services is a big piece of what's allowed new technologies like device enrollment program, the volume purchase program for accessing apps from the App Store. All these pieces really fit together. The other thing that I think Apple deserves praise for is the way that they've really put customer privacy first and foremost as they enter into these cloud service offerings. This is a big distinction from other cloud service companies. Apple doesn't sell their customer data for advertising purposes, and they have some of the best privacy standards across anyone in the industry for really protecting the data that they're keeping inside of that iCloud service. So I think it's a really positive sign, and I'm excited to see as this continues to expand and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tim Cook mentions this all the time too. We are not the product of Apple. The product of Apple is the actual hardware itself. And what you see, I think, is Apple's getting better at the cloud faster than other companies are getting better at making hardware. So some really interesting things happening there. And we know that they need some more work on it, but they're definitely getting better and better. Now, another really interesting thing that happened, of course, this year is Apple came out with new hardware, new products. We love new products from Apple, and they came out with a great new one this year with the Apple Watch. Entirely new platform for it. We in the office, of course, have been using some of them and playing around with them and trying to understand what new features and what new technologies we can gain from it in a corporate setting here.
Yeah, and the thing that I think is most exciting about Apple Watch is this is still a first generation hardware product. We just hit the second iteration of the OS, but really this is a Gen 1 product. It's really quite mature for a first gen product, and I'm really excited to see what this looks like next year, the year after, and the year after that, particularly as software developers catch up with new hardware capabilities. And I'm sure that we're going to be using apps and services that we haven't even dreamed of yet based on the capabilities of a small computer that we're all going to be wearing on our wrist.
Yeah.
Really exciting to see where this leads.
Yeah, and you see it happening at the Developers Conference where you have these really amazing software companies showing up and demoing what's possible with this platform. I really appreciated the demo by that healthcare company that did wireless heart rate monitors right on there. Amazing, amazing technologies. Now, another new thing that they came out with this year is the new MacBook. And we wanted to highlight this one just because it's very interesting. It's the thinnest Mac that they have out there, and it has only one port on there. Really represents a major sea change in what they're doing.
Yeah, this is another example where Apple's never been afraid to push the industry forward, to buck the trend or to define a new standard. And here we see when you take everything else away, in a lot of ways, one port is pretty much the minimum you can get to, right? As long as there's some way to charge the device. But what's really exciting here is the work that they've done with miniaturization, with battery technologies, with really shrinking down that logic board. This is a benefit, of course, not only to the MacBook itself, but these are the technologies that will be used across the Apple line in years to come. And I expect that this will ripple outwards to other companies. So Apple's really doing a lot of that heavy lifting of the research and development of creating that next generation of devices.
Great. So let's take a look now at some of the enterprise agreements that Apple's been doing here. This year, they announced a partnership with Cisco. Now, if you remember from last year, they announced a partnership with IBM, where IBM is building some apps for iPads and really trumpeting this idea of mobile first in the enterprise. Now, with Apple partnering with Cisco, they're trying to deliver an optimized network for these iOS devices and really creating a better experience for voice on iPhone. This is just a great example of Tim Cook getting out there into the enterprise and making key partnerships with these types of organizations.
Yeah, this is something that we really didn't see before Tim Cook took over as CEO. It's a really positive sign to see Apple working with other leaders in the technology space, like Cisco, like IBM, even beside kind of the specific details of this technology integration, I think it says something really good about where Apple sees its role in working with these other leaders in technology. And for any enterprise customer, I think that this speaks volumes to Apple's commitment to that enterprise segment.
Yeah, and as someone that that's been following Apple for a while, you'll know that this is pretty unique of Apple. Steve Jobs didn't do a lot of this, and it's clearly an important issue for Tim as he takes the company into the direction that he'd like to take Apple. Now, it's gone beyond just these large partnerships. They've also been partnering with some mobility partners, as they're calling it. And these mobility partners are companies like Box and Dropbox and other organizations that are really trumpeting the idea of mobile first, using apps to get business done. And you see both Tim and other senior VPs like Eddie here talking at these events and really getting out there in front of the community.
Yeah, and just as we talked about a minute ago about how we have yet to really realize the full potential of the Apple Watch as a brand new platform. In a lot of ways, we're still climbing that path with the iPhone and the iPad of moving beyond kind of the the simple communication technologies, email, phone, chat, and getting into more of those examples of really driving business value. I think that both Box and Dropbox are examples where, for those companies that really commit to using these platforms and integrating them within their organization's workflows, this is where you can get that higher level benefit for an organization. And it shows, again, it just shows that commitment to working with both the developers who are building these tools and helping those developers reach more customers so that they can bring that mobile-first technology to more organizations.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to watch this space as Apple partners with more and more organizations that are focused on changing business from a mobile perspective. Now, of course, this summer or this fall, they launched some new operating systems. We're all familiar with kind of the two big ones, right? With OS 10 El Capitan and iOS 9. But they've also introduced two other operating systems that are making its way into mainstream. And that is Watch OS 2, already in its second iteration, and an entirely new operating system called tvOS, which is for Apple TV. What's interesting about this is that Apple now has these 4 platforms that they are independently working on. Now, a lot of them share a lot of underlining resources, but it's amazing to see how much development Apple can get done nowadays.
Yeah, it's impressive to see just how much Apple's internal engineering organization has scaled up. I think the other thing that doesn't always get the headlines is the advancements that Apple has made in building platforms that are really developer friendly and building out those support resources to help the third-party software developers make the most out of these platforms. Nick, you mentioned how they're sharing common frameworks across the board. This means that if you're developing an iOS app, it's relatively easy to also then develop a Watch app or even a tvOS app or a Mac app. It also means that there's consistent security policies across these, so that for, say, an organization who's building in-house apps, it's a much smaller hill to climb to make a great, not only a great user experience, but a secure app for your internal users.
Yeah, and you got to think that this is really a good playbook for Apple. All right, when you take a look back at iOS, they announced iOS back when they were making 10.4 Tiger, and they had to kind of stall some development time on that. But now they're able to launch 2 new operating systems in really the last year and a half. With full SDKs, full developer support. If Apple wants to get into any other platform, this is the playbook in which they can do it by. Now, another platform that we want to talk about isn't really an operating system per se, but it's a really important one to our industry, and that is the deployment programs. Now, when we talk about the deployment programs, there are really 2 key ones. That is the Device Enrollment Program, or commonly known as DEP, or the Volume Purchase Program, known as VPP. DEP allows you to automatically enroll devices that you purchase directly from Apple. So the idea is you can buy a device, ship it directly to your end users. They open it up just like any other consumer would, get that nice out-of-box experience, and their Mac is automatically enrolled and set up into your management framework. VPP, on the other hand, is for deploying apps. You can purchase apps in bulk, and you can deploy them to your end users. They've done some really interesting things with both of these platforms with regard to the new operating systems.
Yeah, it's great to see as these two have matured. This has been a big focus of ours and of the customers that we work with. I think that the part that I find most exciting about this is we're reaching the point where it kind of doesn't matter if the users you support are connected to your internal network anymore. With DEP and VPP, they're accessing content. They're downloading apps from the App Store, so you don't have to worry about hosting those app packages. With the device enrollment program, as long as they're able to connect to your management server and the DEP service in the cloud, then all those management commands can happen on the public internet. So we're approaching that spot where if you are supporting a global organization, or maybe you have employees that work from home or folks that travel a lot. With these two programs side by side, it makes management just as easy inside your network as it does for those folks who are outside your network. Really positive sign. And I would encourage you, if you're not yet using either DEP or VPP, I would strongly encourage you to go and sign up for these and at least begin testing. I think that this is it's clear that this is the future of how we're going to be doing deployment. There's actually a lot of additional features that you get if you use device enrollment program with supervision on an iOS device, an iPhone or an iPad. So I'd strongly encourage you to check this out if you're not already using it today.
Yeah, and they keep improving these programs every single year, which is amazing. Specifically with the VPP program, this year they announced that you can now deploy apps directly to a device without the need for an Apple ID on there. Now, Apple's not saying get rid of Apple IDs altogether, but rather you can deploy an app without the need for that. So continues to get better every single day. Now, another event that happened in 2015 that we wanted to highlight is an organization that is leveraging these programs, and that organization is IBM. IBM has been doing some amazing things, and they had a chance to speak at our National User Conference this year. IBM is doing a Mac at IBM program where they are deploying over 1,900 Macs per week to IBMers. And while they're doing it, they are both saving money and reducing IT tickets. Fletcher Previn, their VP of Workplace as a Service, that's a wonderful title, shared this story with us and really highlights what is possible with a large organization switching from PCs to Macs.
Yeah, Nick, you and I were both lucky enough to be there to hear Fletcher deliver this presentation. For anyone who missed it, we have a video available on our website if you'd like to hear directly from Fletcher, and I really encourage you to do so. But some of the exciting things that he shared is when IBM began this journey, they looked at how can we do things differently. They weren't just trying to apply the exact same management process that they did for Windows onto Mac. And I think that's kind of the source of their big success. So what they did is they kind of ripped apart the playbook and said, how can we support Mac users in the best possible way for Mac users? So as you mentioned, they're using the device enrollment program. They're making use of volume purchase program. They're doing a lot of self-service and user enablement activities. So what they found is that they're actually reducing the number of folks who are calling their help desk. And as a consequence, they can support their 30,000 plus Mac users with much fewer help desk individuals. This, of course, reduces cost, and it frees up their IT resources to work on more like high value add projects. The other thing that I took away that I thought was really interesting to hear from a company like IBM is that they're not just doing this as a technology project. They're not just doing this as a way to reduce IT costs, but they see this as a way to attract and retain top talent. That for those in a competitive workplace, the folks that IBM is trying to hire, they see this as a competitive differentiator, that they're able to offer new employees a choice between a Mac or a Windows PC. You choose whatever platform you're going to be most comfortable with, the platform you're going to be most productive with, and that for them, that is a way that they're attracting and retaining talent. I think that's a really positive story, and I can't wait to hear more stories like this from other organizations.
Yeah, really great story, and some really key themes that are really striking true to the entire enterprise as a whole. Another thing that we wanted to touch on today is Apple's earnings calls. And these are always fun because there's so many stats in there, and it's great to pull some stories out of it. And here are just a few that we were able to pull from it. The first one is that Apple announced for the very first time how much revenue they are making just from their enterprise segment. That is $25 billion, just about 10% of their total revenue. And this is an amazing stat. Apple's never shared this before, and it really shows how much they are growing.
Yeah, I look at this and I say, if there's any question in your mind of whether or not Apple is serious about the enterprise market, when they are announcing on their earnings call to Wall Street and the rest of the world, just the size and the importance of that segment, I think it's clear that this is part of their strategy now and moving forward. And so we can lay that old stereotype to rest.
Absolutely. Another key stat that they shared related to IBM. They were able to share the specific dollar amount that IBM saves deploying Macs. And that is $270 per Mac. That is an amazing total cost of ownership study right there. Now, IBM has said that they will be releasing a full study on that, and we'll be waiting for that full report soon. But amazing story here. Very amazing.
Yeah, and these are the kind of stats that get the attention not only of the IT leaders in your organization, but of the CFOs and CIOs and CEOs. Because if you're able to deliver a better user experience on a platform that users are choosing, and you can do it while saving $270 per user, I mean, that's an incredible story about driving efficiency, and it's the kind of thing that a lot of organizations are focused on right now.
Yeah. Now, moving on to some of their products. Last year, Apple sold 20 million Macs. This was the best year that Apple has ever had. And it's amazing to compare that to what the PC industry is doing, where they are staying stagnant. Apple is growing in their Mac business.
Yeah, this is really neat to see. It also proves that Apple's strategy of making a really high-quality premium product and commanding a premium price for it, it works. Yes, you can, of course, buy a cheaper laptop if you look at the dozens of manufacturers who are making PC laptops. But at the end of the day, 20 million people this year, the most who have ever chosen to buy a Mac did so. And I think it just shows the strength of Apple's position of making really high quality products. And as you mentioned, Nick, they're growing their Mac business into a shrinking overall PC market. Really interesting to see this.
Yeah. And another hardware item that has gotten a lot of attention over the past year here is iPads. When you look at the raw numbers of iPads, if you look at for the past 2 years, Apple has sold 3 iPads for every single Mac sold. However way you want to slice it and dice it, that is a lot of devices.
Yeah, when the iPad first came out, I think that the prognosticators were hoping that the iPad would have that same rocket ship trajectory of sales as the iPhone did. Obviously, the iPhone is really in a class of its own in terms of success of a product launch. But what I think is exciting about the iPad is how lots of organizations are finding unique ways to use an iPad and filling gaps that really weren't possible with a laptop or with an iPhone. For example, schools are using iPads to teach and help students learn in new ways. Hospitals are using iPads so that they can have lots of information at their fingertips and really high quality displays that they can share with their patients. Retail organizations are equipping their sales force with iPads or using them in a kiosk example, again, where it just wouldn't be practical with other types of computers. So I think it's exciting to see as the iPad continues to grow, and I'm sure we're gonna find lots of more unique ways to use this type of platform.
Yeah, I think you'll find most of us here at Jamf are very bullish on the iPad. Now, another key thing that Apple has done this year, of course, is come out with another new device, and that is the iPad Pro. This is the largest iPad that they have made, and one of the most fastest devices they have too. It actually rivals a lot of their Macs, and it has the option to get a lot of different things done on it. It is clearly aimed at not only the consumer market but also the enterprise market too.
Yeah, the inclusion of that smart keyboard with the keyboard that folds into the case, the Apple Pencil, these are tools that are expanding what's possible on that tablet form factor. It's too early to know since this just came out a few weeks ago, but as you mentioned, Nick, I think we're all excited to see what's possible with iPad and where we see people maybe choosing an iPad Pro over a laptop in the future.
Yeah. I think there'll be some really good stories coming from this in the coming months. Now let's look forward, right? Let's take a look at some of the trends that we see happening here in 2016 with Apple. And that first trend, of course, is that enterprise and Apple are going to continue to grow. You're going to see deeper integration, potentially more partnerships, not only with the big names like IBM and Cisco, but with those smaller ones, with the mobility partners, to create really a whole ecosystem of a solution so that you're not just buying a box off the shelf, you're getting an entire ecosystem for getting work done on the Apple platform.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how, in a lot of ways, Apple is using that same playbook that was so successful for Microsoft in the 90s, creating a great platform, really helping their developer community both to build great apps and then to reach more customers. I think that what we see now with Apple's focus on this market is more and more business segments will have the opportunity to use apps that weren't available 5 years ago, and that'll be helping businesses drive efficiency, helping to create new ways to interact with their customers, and it's really exciting to see how this continues to grow inside the enterprise ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another trend that we see happening here is that the user preference of these devices, so the user preference of saying, I like using a Mac and I want to use a Mac, is translating over to the business preference. Because you have individuals that are coming into organizations and they're saying, I'm comfortable on this operating system. This is what I'm used to. I would like to use it. Companies are following that same path.
Yeah, really over the last 10 years, we've been just watching all the objections fall apart for those organizations said, no, we couldn't possibly support a Mac in our organization. At this point, I think this will become the new standard of offering that choice between a Mac or a Windows laptop. Do you want a Surface Book or do you want an iPad Pro? Making these offering that choice not only helps employees be more productive, but with some of these IT technologies, like device enrollment program, like the volume purchase program, it can also make IT's job that much easier, driving more efficiency, reducing the amount of time and energy spent on kind of those low value add activities like, help, I need to install some software. Yeah. That can be completely automated. It frees up IT to focus more on the truly innovative side of technology and helping to drive forward the goals of your organization.
Yeah, and Apple's really calling this kind of that new IT philosophy. This will definitely be something that continues as a trend into 2016. Now, the next trend, of course, that we see is related to iOS. iOS really being first in the enterprise. And you see this with a lot of reports that are put out there, with Apple taking 70+% of the enterprise market when it comes to mobile devices. And what we really believe here at Jamf is that that's not only because of user preference and user choice, but it's also because devices like Android are just not enterprise ready. When you take a look at all the different security holes that they've had and different vulnerabilities, we believe that Android is not necessarily the enterprise device out there for mobility.
Yeah, looking forward, I think it's clear that the devices in use, by and large, within enterprise, obviously Android's not going away. There's going to be millions and millions of people that use those as their personal smartphone. But we see for those organizations that are really committing to mobility as a strategy in their organization, that it'll be a share between Apple and Microsoft. Both companies are well equipped to deliver not only the hardware but the software as well, and both companies have the right financial incentives. I can't resist but mention how Google, the force behind Android, is at the end of the day an advertising company. Their goal, their revenue is based on selling user information to advertisers, and that really doesn't square with the needs of the enterprise. Apple, clearly an enterprise organization. Microsoft has been for decades now. So we see that as really the two major platforms to watch for over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and iOS is going to get even stronger as it iterates over and over and over again. This is an operating system that is only just a few years old, and it started off on just a little 3.5-inch phone. Now it's able to run on a 13-inch tablet and be powered by processors that are more powerful than some Macs out there. So it's going to get even better over time. So let's tie this all back now. what does this mean for you as someone who is in the IT industry and specifically concerned about Apple in the IT industry? Well, what we believe is going to happen is that IT pros are going to be will continue to be in demand. As much as a lot of people say that IT is kind of going away, we believe that IT is going to be more important than ever. And not only will IT in general be more important than ever, but also Apple specialization within IT is going to be more important.
Yeah, and if you go back and look at that story from IBM that we referenced, and again, I'd encourage you to watch that video. You can find it on our site if you haven't already. What's the opportunity in front of us here is evolving some of the roles and functions that IT holds. The days of building OS images and rolling those out one at a time, those days are probably numbered. There's new ways to do that using some of these new technologies. But what we see is IT can really become a driver of business value, of unlocking new ways to build efficiency, unlocking new ways to get work done in a mobile workforce, and making a better experience for your organization's customers, whether you're a school, a hospital, a retail store, whatever your business happens to be. Chances are you can, within IT has the tools to help that customer experience be everything that can be.
Great. And they'll also be really driving these business changes with mobile in general, right? You see it a lot with some of the apps that are out there and with these partners that Apple who are partnering with in the mobility side will really change these business processes. So let's tie it back now. Let's say you're really, really interested in this stuff. You want to learn more. You want to get started with connecting with the community and just finding out more about the Casper Suite, more about Apple IT in general. Well, I highly recommend check out Jamf Nation. Jamf Nation is our free online forum. It is driven by the community. There are a lot of great discussion topics on here, ranging from do we give users admin rights or not, or do we bind our Macs or not? All these questions that you might have, a lot of it are being discussed here. The other thing I would recommend doing is check out our training options, our certifications that we offer. We mentioned that Apple specialization will be an important thing in the future. Not only do we offer certifications for our product, but we also offer certifications for the Apple operating system as a whole. So you can come on in, get trained on everything that you need to know about really truly managing these devices for an organization. Lastly, go to our website. Reach out to us. We'd love to chat with you if you've got some specific needs. We've got folks that are on our chat line. They're always willing to talk with you. You can give us a call, shoot us an email, and really get the process started. We've got a lot of great smart systems engineers here that would love to go very deep into your technical issues that you might have.